I should have known this trip was going to end in chaos the second we landed in Miami and found out the Airbnb had only one working bathroom, 5 guys, one toilet, a week of drinking, and sunburns. It was destined to go sideways. But that wasn't the part that mattered. What mattered was him. Zach, my best friend since sophomore year. The kind of guy who made people stare when he walked into a room. Tan, tall, always laughing too loud. He had that effortless charm that made you want to stay near him, even if it killed you a little inside. And I'd been dying inside for a while. We were both single. Not like that ever meant anything. He was straight or close enough to it that he never gave me a reason to think otherwise. Girls, always. Tinder dates, flirty bartenders. I played the role of wingman, wingbro, whatever. And I hated myself for how easily I accepted it. This trip was supposed to be a reset. Graduation behind us, real life looming. One last reckless getaway before we scattered into internships and jobs in separate cities. But that night, the third night, we got too drunk. It was after a bar crawl. We'd started at some overhyped rooftop place and ended up at a Cuban dive with cheap mojitos and music so loud it rattled your spine. The others bailed early, too wasted or sunburned or both. But Zach and I stayed, dancing, drinking, laughing like idiots. We got back to the Airbnb sometime after 2 a.m., both stumbling, shirts half unbuttoned. I remember the way he clung to me in the hallway, his arm heavy around my shoulders, his face close enough that I could smell the rum on his breath. "Dude," he mumbled, "this is the best trip ever." "Yeah," I said, my voice tighter than I meant. "Totally." The room I was supposed to crash in had a busted AC unit and felt like a sauna. I groaned and turned to go sleep on the couch. "Don't be stupid," Zach said, grabbing my arm. "Just crash with me." "You sure?" I asked. Hesitating, he shrugged. "We've shared worse." It was true. Music festivals, road trips, college dorms with tiny-ass beds. Nothing new. But something about that night felt different. His grip didn't loosen. His eyes lingered. I told myself I was imagining it. I should have slept on the couch. But I followed him into the room. The bed was barely big enough for 2 grown men, and the fan overhead clicked like it might fall any minute. We lay there in the dark, limbs half tangled, breath still shallow from too much alcohol and heat. And then I don't remember much else. Just flickers. A thigh brushing mine. His hand on my waist. My own breath catching in my throat. A warmth that felt too intentional. A mumble. A sigh. Nothing clear. Until the morning. The light was brutal when I opened my eyes. My head was pounding, my mouth dry. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was Zach, still in bed, still beside me, his leg thrown over mine, his arm heavy across my stomach, his face inches from mine, peaceful, like nothing was wrong, like we hadn't crossed a line I couldn't even remember crossing. I didn't move. Not right away. I just stared at the ceiling, heart thudding, trying to piece together what the hell had happened, and dreading what he'd say when he woke up. I laid there frozen, my eyes wide open, every part of my body screaming with questions I wasn't ready to answer. His arm, still slung over my stomach, was warm, heavy, familiar in a way that felt suddenly alien. His leg was hooked casually over mine, like this was just how we slept now. And his face was relaxed in the soft morning light, lips parted slightly, lashes casting faint shadows across his cheeks. It would have been beautiful if it weren't also completely messing with my head. I shifted, just slightly, enough that the mattress creaked. Zach stirred. His brows knit together, and for a second I thought maybe he'd just roll over, and that would be the end of it. Maybe I could sneak out of the bed, hit the shower, and pretend we'd both just passed out in the same space after a night of heavy drinking. But no, he blinked. Groggy, confused. His eyes met mine. And then it hit him. I saw it happen, like a wave washing over his face. The confusion, the slow realization, and then the sharp jolt of awareness. "Oh shit," he mumbled, quickly pulling his arm back like it had been burned. He sat up too fast, immediately wincing from the hangover. "Fuck. My head is... What the hell?" I sat up more slowly, staying on my side of the bed, trying to play it cool, even though my chest felt like it was about to crack open. "You don't remember?" I asked, my voice hoarse. Zach rubbed his temples. "Not really. I mean, we came back late. You were gonna sleep in the sweatbox room, but I told you to stay here, right?" "Yeah. And then I passed out." He looked at me uncertain. "Right?" I swallowed. "Sort of." His eyes narrowed. "Sort of?" There it was, the first flicker of tension. The thing neither of us wanted to say out loud. "You were close," I said, careful with my words. "You, threw your leg over me." "And your arm," he blinked. "Right, okay. Yeah, I mean, that sounds like me when I'm drunk. I'm a clingy sleeper, I guess." I laughed a little too loudly. "Yeah, sure, totally normal." We sat in silence for a beat. Zach scratched the back of his neck, avoiding my gaze. I didn't do anything, did I? The question hung between us, heavy and loaded. I could have lied. Could have said no, just passed out, same as always. But something stopped me. "There was a moment," I said quietly, watching his reaction. "Not sure what it meant. You held me." His mouth parted slightly. "Held you?" "Yeah." He stared at the wall, his jaw tight. "Damn, I was that far gone?" I waited, hoping he'd say more, hoping he'd remember more. But he didn't. Instead, he pushed the blanket off, stood up too fast again, and stumbled a bit. "I need coffee. Like yesterday," I nodded. "Yeah, me too." We didn't say anything else as we padded down the hall toward the kitchen. The rest of the house was quiet. Luis must still be out with his beach girl, and Jared was already gone. The clock on the microwave blinked 9:42 a.m. Zach moved around the kitchen like a man possessed, digging out the coffee filters, fumbling for the bag of grounds. I leaned against the counter, watching him, heart still racing. I hated how good he looked, even like this. Shirtless, hair a mess, hungover and barely functioning. The problem was, I didn't just remember the way he'd touched me. I remembered how it felt. Safe, familiar, intimate in a way that didn't feel accidental. And now I was stuck between wanting to forget and needing to know if he felt it too. He finally turned around, 2 mugs in hand, offering one to me. "Thanks," I said, taking it. We sipped in silence. He started, then stopped. "Look, if anything weird happened last night, I'm sorry." There it was again. That word, weird. I wanted to tell him it wasn't weird. That I didn't mind. That I'd wanted it. Maybe longer than I was ready to admit. But I couldn't say it. Not yet. Maybe not ever. "It's fine," I said instead, forcing a small smile. "We were both out of it. No big deal." Zach nodded. "Right. No big deal." But the way he avoided my eyes told a different story. The silence returned, stretching too long. And then, just as I was about to say something, anything to break it, Zach surprised me. "You remember more than you're saying, don't you?" My chest tightened. I looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" He set his mug down. "I mean, you're not acting like someone who blacked out." I hesitated. "You didn't black out either." "Did I?" he asked, voice low. "Because I think I remember touching you. Like, on purpose." The air snapped between us, like a rubber band stretched too far. I didn't breathe. Zach stepped closer. "And I think," he continued, "I remember liking it." My fingers tightened around the mug. "I didn't stop you," I said, barely above a whisper. "I know," he said. "That's what's messing with me." Zach's words were still hanging in the air, charged and too loud in the quiet kitchen. "That's what's messing with me." I set my mug down, carefully, like I was trying not to make any sudden movements that might spook him or myself. "You mean," I said slowly, "you remember liking it? And that's a problem?" He didn't answer right away. He ran a hand through his already messy hair, pacing a few feet away like he was trying to walk the thought out of his head. "It's not that it's a problem," he said eventually, his back half turned to me. "It's just unexpected," I snorted. "You could say that again." He turned to face me. "Look, man, I'm not trying to make this weird between us. I've never done anything like that before. And now I'm waking up with you in my bed." And he stopped himself. "I don't know. It's throwing me off." "Zach," I said, careful not to sound offensive, "I don't need a whole breakdown. It was a drunk night. I wasn't expecting anything." "Yeah, but that's the thing." His voice was tight. "I was. Not expecting it, I mean. But I didn't hate it. And I feel like I'm supposed to." I blinked. "Why would you be supposed to?" He sighed. "Because I've always been the straight one. The safe guy. The dude who makes dumb jokes and flirts with bartenders. This isn't supposed to happen. I'm not supposed to want to." He cut himself off again. "To what?" I asked, my voice steady even though my heart was doing somersaults. Zach looked at me, really looked, and for the first time in years of friendship, there was no mask, no joke, no deflection. "I think I wanted to hold you," he said softly. "Even before the drinking." My breath caught. I opened my mouth, then closed it, because I didn't trust myself not to say something stupid like "me too," or "you have no idea how long I've waited to hear that." He looked down. "And now I don't know what to do with that." I stepped around the counter slowly until we were face to face. "You don't have to do anything," I said. "It's just a moment, unless you want it to be more than that." He stared at me for a beat, his eyes flicking to my mouth, then back to my eyes. "I don't know what I want," he admitted, "but I know I don't want to pretend like nothing happened." That cracked something open in me. "So what does that mean?" I asked. He let out a breath, like he'd been holding it for years. "It means I don't want to back away from this." It was such a simple sentence, but it hit like a hammer. He looked nervous, actually nervous. And I realized this wasn't a moment I could just joke away or treat like some awkward vacation story. Something real was happening. He took a cautious step toward me. We were close now, the kind of close that had space for one more wrong move or the right one. "I don't know what this is," Zach said, "but I think I'd like to find out. With you." My throat felt tight. I nodded slowly. "Okay." He searched my face. "Okay." "Yeah," I said again. "Okay." The tension didn't break. It changed. Morphed into something quieter, something unsure but full of possibility. We didn't hug or high-five or joke. We just stood there, breathing in this new, fragile space between us, both of us knowing we'd crossed a line we couldn't uncross. The day moved on in a blur. We avoided the beach, stayed in, watched something on Netflix without really watching. Zach sat on the far end of the couch, and for a while, I wondered if he regretted saying anything. But then, hours later, when the sun was going down and the room was bathed in orange light, he shifted closer. Not a lot, just enough that our knees touched. And he didn't move away. Zach didn't say anything when our knees touched. He just let them stay there, bare skin to bare skin, warm and unmoving. It was such a small thing, so easily deniable, and yet I couldn't focus on a single word coming from the TV. Neither could he, judging by the way his jaw flexed, his body stilled. The kind of silence that didn't feel like avoidance, but like waiting. I don't know how long we sat like that. The sun outside dipped lower, shadows crawling across the room, and neither of us reached for the remote. Eventually, I said quietly, "You doing okay?" He looked at me, blinking like I'd just pulled him out of a trance. "Yeah," he said, but his voice cracked. I think so. You sure? Zach took a breath. No, not really, but I want to be. It was the first time I'd heard fear in his voice. Not the kind that came from panic, but the kind that came from letting go. From opening a door you'd always assumed was locked, I turned to face him more fully. Look, I'm not trying to rush you into anything. We can chalk last night up to tequila and heat stroke if that's easier. His eyes searched mine. Do you want to do that? I hesitated. No, he exhaled, something like relief softening his shoulders. Yeah, me neither. We sat in the quiet for another beat. Then he said, You know what's crazy? I've been close with people before and felt nothing. Just doing it to do it. I nodded. Yeah, been there. But last night, he said, even if I was drunk, I remembered this piece. Like my body finally caught up to something my brain didn't want to say out loud. That hit me in the chest. I swallowed hard. Zach. He looked nervous again. What? You're not broken, okay? If this is new territory, that's fine, but you don't have to explain yourself to me. He gave a weak laugh. I think I kinda do. I mean, you're the one I woke up holding like a goddamn body pillow. Hey, I said, grinning. You're the one who said I was warm. He laughed, really laughed this time. True, you are annoyingly warm. Human space heater. I smiled, and the air between us softened a little. It was like the tension didn't disappear. It just shifted, becoming something more bearable, something familiar. Zach looked at me again, his eyes darker now, serious. What if I said I wanted to try something? My heart skipped. Like what? He took a shaky breath. Like, seeing what this feels like. With you. I didn't move, didn't speak, just looked at him and waited. Then, slowly, like he was afraid I might stop him, Zach leaned in. I felt his breath before anything else. Warm, shaky, unsure. His hand brushed against my leg. His eyes searched mine one last time, asking for permission without words. And I gave it, by not pulling away. Our lips met, hesitant at first. Soft, testing, but when I didn't stop him, when I kissed him back, it changed. Deepened. His hand slid to the side of my face, thumb brushing my cheek like he couldn't believe this was real. And I couldn't either. Because this was Zach. My best friend. The guy I'd quietly wanted for way too long. And now he was here, kissing me like he'd been waiting just as long to figure it out. We broke apart slowly, foreheads touching, both of us breathless. Holy shit, he whispered. I didn't think it'd feel like that. I swallowed. Like, what? Like something I don't want to stop. I closed my eyes for a second, steadying myself. We don't have to figure it all out right now, I said. We've got 3 more days here. Just be here. With me. Zach nodded. Yeah, okay. He leaned back, pulling me gently with him. We lay there on the couch, tangled up, barely touching, but completely connected in this new, fragile way. Neither of us said much for the rest of the night. We didn't need to. For once, the silence didn't feel awkward. It felt like the beginning of something. The next morning felt different, not just because I woke up in the same bed again, with Zach's arm slung over me like it belonged there, but because this time, we both knew exactly how we'd ended up like that. And neither of us moved. The ceiling fan above spun lazily. Outside the window, I could hear the faint crash of ocean waves. It should have been a peaceful moment, something out of a vacation commercial. But my heart was racing, because his hand was still on my chest. Because I could feel the rise and fall of his breath behind me. Because now, there were no excuses, no alcohol, no foggy memories to hide behind. This was real. I shifted slightly, just enough to let him know I was awake. He stirred behind me, groaning softly as he adjusted, pulling me in closer out of instinct. My stomach flipped. Morning, I said, my voice hoarse. He didn't say anything right away, just let out a breath against the back of my neck. Morning, he mumbled a second later, his voice still scratchy with sleep. A beat passed. "I didn't dream it, did I?" he asked quietly. "No," I said, "you didn't." He let out a low hum, the kind people make when they're both relieved and confused. Then he moved, slowly, gently, shifting onto his back and looking up at the ceiling. I turned, facing him, propping myself up on one elbow. His hair was a mess, eyes puffy, and yet somehow he still looked good. That same Zach charm, just softer now, a little more unguarded. "You okay?" I asked. He nodded. "I think so." I raised an eyebrow. "That doesn't sound convincing." Zach looked at me, eyes serious. "I'm not freaking out, if that's what you're worried about. I don't know where this goes." I laid back down beside him, our shoulders brushing. "We don't have to figure it out today," he smiled faintly. "You keep saying that." "Because it's true." He turned his head to look at me. "I'm not used to not knowing things." "Welcome to the club," I said, grinning. "First rule is, no pretending you've got it all figured out." Zach laughed, the sound muffled by the pillow. "All right, fine. You're the president of the club, I assume?" "Founder and sole member, until now." He reached over and bumped his fist gently against my arm. "Thanks for not making this weird." I looked at him. "Are you kidding? This is weird." He laughed again. "Okay, true. But I meant, thanks for not making me feel like I messed everything up." I turned on my side so I could see him better. "You didn't. If anything, you made things honest." Zach went quiet, staring at the ceiling for a moment. Then, "Can I ask you something?" "Yeah." Have you ever thought about me like this? Before?" I felt the breath catch in my throat. Part of me wanted to lie, to play it off. But that moment had passed. There wasn't space for half-truths anymore. "Yeah," I said. "For a while." He nodded like he'd already known. "I kind of figured." "You mad?" He looked at me, amused. "Why would I be mad?" "I don't know. Some guys would take it the wrong way." "I'm not some guys," Zach said, simply. I smiled. "No, you're not." He rolled over onto his side, mirroring me now, our faces close again. "So what now?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "We chill, we hang out, maybe we kiss again. Maybe we talk about what this looks like when we're back home." "Yeah? Yeah?" Zach leaned in slowly, brushing his nose against mine in a way that was so him. Affectionate, but not overly serious. And then he kissed me again. Light, curious. Like he was still figuring it out, but no longer afraid to try. It lasted only a few seconds, but it said more than either of us could have put into words. When we pulled apart, he smiled. "So, we're doing this?" he asked. I reached for his hand under the blanket, laced our fingers together. "Looks like it." The next 2 days passed in a weird golden haze. Not in some dreamy, romantic fantasy way, but in that quiet, new kind of closeness that happens when you've known someone forever, and suddenly, something shifts. Zach and I didn't become a couple overnight. There were no labels thrown around, no deep, tearful heart-to-hearts, but something was different. And it was there in the small things, like how he'd lean just a little closer when we were sitting on the deck, or how his knee would press into mine while we ate breakfast and he wouldn't move it, or how we'd share a look whenever the others walked back in from the beach, like we had some private understanding now. It felt fragile and exciting and terrifying all at once. We still went out with Luis and the others, still played stupid drinking games, still told dumb stories from college around the fire pit. But under the surface, there was something between us now that hadn't been there before. And Zach didn't hide it. He didn't announce anything either, but the way he looked at me when he thought no one was watching, that told me enough. One night, 2 beers deep, we ended up on the balcony while the others were inside playing some chaotic card game. The breeze off the ocean was warm and lazy, and the string lights over the deck cast a soft glow on everything. Zach leaned against the railing, his eyes on the waves. You ever think about how different this week could have been? Yeah, I said. All the time. He turned toward me, like if we hadn't stayed out drinking that night. If I hadn't pulled you into my bed like a drunk idiot. I shrugged. You say that like it was an accident. He smiled, a little crooked. Okay, fine. Maybe not totally an accident. I laughed. You seem pretty comfortable for someone who doesn't do that kind of thing. He looked out at the water again. Yeah, it's wild. I always thought I had myself figured out, you know. Most people do, until they don't. He was quiet for a moment, and then he said, I'm glad it was you. That stopped me. I looked at him. What do you mean? I mean, he said, turning to face me again, if I was going to get completely thrown off my axis by a guy, I'm glad it was you. My throat felt tight. I looked down at the wooden slats beneath our feet, heart hammering in my chest. That means more than you probably realize, I said. He stepped closer. I think I'm realizing a lot lately. We stood there in the soft dark, not touching, but close enough that I could feel his warmth. I wanted to reach for his hand, but I didn't want to push it. So when he reached first, slowly, cautiously, letting his fingers brush mine before intertwining them, it caught me off guard in the best possible way. I don't know what happens when we go home, he said. I don't know if I'm ready to put a name on this or tell anyone, but I don't want this to be a vacation thing. It doesn't have to be, I said. He looked at me, eyes steady. You sure? I nodded. I've wanted this for a long time. I'm not going to let it disappear just because we're not by the ocean anymore. He exhaled like he'd been holding that breath for days. We heard the others laughing inside, yelling something about Luis cheating at cards again, but for a moment, it all faded. It was just me and Zach and the low hum of waves crashing against the sand. Then he leaned in and kissed me again, and it felt different this time. Not like an experiment. Not like something he was trying out, but like something he'd chosen. We left Miami the next morning. The airport was chaos. Overpriced coffee, people yelling at confused gate agents, and the smell of questionable breakfast burritos hanging thick in the air. Our flight was delayed, then suddenly not, and we had to run through half the terminal like idiots to make it on board. Somehow, none of that mattered. Zach sat next to me, earbuds in, head tipped back against the seat. He looked calm. Tired, yeah, but content in a way I hadn't seen before. We didn't talk much on the flight. I watched half a movie I didn't care about, then dozed off for a bit. But at some point, mid-air, his hand found mine on the armrest and stayed there, just resting. Just enough pressure to make sure I knew it wasn't by mistake. We landed back home just after noon, the sky gray and colder than it had been in weeks. Total mood whiplash. I suddenly remembered how many things were waiting for me. Emails, job interviews, a rent check that was probably already late. Zach's parents picked him up from the curb outside the terminal. I was calling an Uber when he turned to me, eyes still half-lidded from sleep. Text me when you're home? I nodded. You too. He hesitated, like he wanted to say more. But his mom waved from the passenger seat, and he just gave me a look. One of those lingering glances we'd exchanged 1,000 times in college, now finally stripped of all the confusion. It wasn't dramatic. No kiss, no parting monologue. Just a shared look that said, yeah, we're good. When I got back to my apartment, everything felt smaller, quieter. The bed looked too big. The place too still. The ocean sounds that had filled our nights were replaced by traffic and a neighbor's dog barking through the wall. But I didn't feel alone. Not really. Zach texted later that night. Made it back. Already missing the view and the company. I stared at the message for a second before replying. Miss you too. Even the snoring. Liar. You loved it. Not as much as you loved using me as a space heater. Fair. You were very useful. I smiled at my phone for longer than I'd admit. The texts kept coming, day after day. Sometimes just memes. Sometimes full conversations about things we hadn't talked about in years. We didn't define anything right away. But something was building. Slow, careful, real. Then, one Friday night, a week after we got home, Zach texted again. Hey, You free tomorrow? Yeah. Why? Thinking I could come over. Talk. Or not talk. Just see you. You're always welcome. The next evening, he showed up with takeout in one hand and a six-pack in the other. Still the same Zach, hoodie, sneakers, smile that could undo you with one crooked twist, but he looked nervous too. I let him in, and we barely made it past the front door before he pulled me into a hug. It wasn't like the ones we'd exchanged 100 times before. This one lingered. He rested his chin on my shoulder and said, "I miss this." I nodded into his neck. Me too. We ended up on the couch, watching a movie we didn't pay attention to. His leg pressed against mine again, and this time I reached for his hand first. And when the credits rolled and the screen faded to black, he didn't move away. He turned toward me, eyes searching. "I still don't have all the right words," he said. "Still don't know what this means long term. But I know I want to be here. With you." "That's enough," I said. "For now." He kissed me then. Slow, sure, steady. Nothing hesitant this time. Nothing uncertain. We didn't need to talk it to death. Whatever it was, whatever it would become, we were already in it. I don't know what I expected when Zach and I first kissed. A fling? A mistake? Something we'd pretend never happened? But not this. Not movie nights that slowly turned into sleepovers. Not the way he started keeping an extra toothbrush at my place. Not the quiet way we fell into routines that felt less like an accident and more like a choice. And definitely not the moment, 3 weeks later, when I woke up and found him sitting on the edge of my bed, barefoot, hair a mess, one hand tangled in his own thoughts. He didn't notice I was awake at first. He just sat there, staring out the window like the sunrise was saying something he couldn't. "What's going on?" I asked softly. He turned, surprised, but didn't smile. "I told my sister," he said. "That made me sit up fast." "Told her what?" "About us." I blinked. "You? What did she say?" He rubbed the back of his neck. "She just said, 'Finally,' then laughed and asked how long we've been in love." I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "Wow. Yeah," he said. "I guess I wasn't hiding it as well as I thought." He looked at me, eyes a little tired but peaceful in a way I hadn't seen in him before. "I don't want to hide it anymore," he said. "I've been doing that most of my life, pretending I knew who I was, pretending there was only one version of me that made sense." He stood up, pacing slowly near the foot of the bed. "But that night in Miami," he continued, "when I woke up and realized I was holding you, it should have scared the hell out of me. But it didn't. It felt right, like my body had figured it out before my brain." I got out of bed and walked up to him, bare feet cold on the hardwood. "It's still okay to be scared," I said. "None of this has to be perfect." He looked at me, really looked, "But I want it to be real." "It is." He nodded, then leaned in, forehead against mine. "So what do we do now?" "We live," I said. "You and me, day by day. No tequila required." He laughed, arms wrapping around my waist. "I'll drink to that." We didn't need a label right away. We didn't need to tell the whole world, post some big announcement, change our relationship status online. What we had was enough. It was in the way he brought me coffee in the mornings, the way his hand always found mine during a movie, the way we kept talking about going back to Miami, not to chase the past, but because we wanted to make new memories, sober ones, clear ones. On our last night of vacation, I remember staring at the ceiling, thinking everything would go back to normal. Instead, it became something better. Not normal, not perfect, but real. And all it took was one drunk night, one shared bed, and the courage to admit that something we hadn't dared speak aloud was already waiting to be discovered.